Order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of January 13th, 2016. Roll call.
Castro,
Here.
Kroll,
Here.
Katz,
Here.
Neer,
Here.
Ruling,
Here.
Wright,
Here.
Atherton,
Here.
all present.
Ask for approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? No. I take a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Neer,
Second.
second by Kroll. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. Citizens' comments. We will open the floor to anyone wishing to speak about anything not on the agenda this evening. If there's anyone in the audience. Okay, going to close the citizen comment time. Approval of the December 16, 2015 meeting minutes. Seems like such a long time ago, but are there any corrections or additions or deletions on the minutes? If not, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of December 16, 2015.
Moved by Castro,
I'll second.
seconded by Neer. Those in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Approval of the December 16th minutes. We will begin with old business tonight, and we will open the continuation of the public hearing on a request by Herb Buer for a variance from the building setback requirement on property zoned single-family residential 1 located at 212 Fairview Drive in DeKalb. Given that this is let me start with Derek's comments, sorry.
Thank you. So tonight you have two unique proposals that, my quick recollection, we haven't had a variance standalone that wasn't part of a planned unit development or a special use or some other zoning function, I think, since 2009. So this is not a regular occurrence with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And previously, this was done by the Zoning Board of Appeals. But fortunately for us, we have two variances tonight to consider. So 2009 to today, we're going to catch up a little bit here. But I think the unique thing to point out regarding variance requests is every property in the city of DeKalb has the ability to utilize their property within the confines of the Unified Development Ordinance, the zoning ordinance. And within that comes with density, setbacks, lot coverage, all the things we talk about during a typical development. When the application of those bulk regulations, and in this case with the Buer residents at 212 Fairview, it's difficult to work under the setback requirements that are in place for the zoning district that's there. And in general circumstance, if the property came into the city and it was a greenfield site, meaning nothing was on it, the setbacks would be met. But in these particular cases this evening, they are both seeking variances due to setback requirements for some unique circumstance. So in the background, you'll see in the Buer case number, the Zoning Board of Appeals case, the setback request is to replace the garage that already exists on site. So you have pictures in the background, and so I'm kind of giving you the 30,000 foot level, and then I'll kind of define it and then turn it back over to Madam Chair there. But the garage that exists, Mr. Buer approached the city and said, I want to rebuild it. And so when we start looking at the setback requirements and realizing that the Buers live on a corner lot of record, and when you're on a corner lot of record, you have 2 front yard setbacks that you have to comply with. And there's an exception that if the lot existed previous to 1956, you can reduce one of those setbacks by 20%, or 15 feet, whichever is greater. The lot's 100 feet wide, so you could reduce the 25-foot yard setback to 20 feet. That still doesn't work. And so then you're in a situation to where you can either rezone it to a PUD and codify the variance in its own special unique zoning district, or you can work him through a process tonight. That's the variance request. And so before you tonight, the Beers have requested from the Planning and Zoning Commission, who are acting as the Zoning Board of Appeals, consideration of this variance to the front yard setback to replace the garage in its current location, but expand the footprint to allow for, I think, simply to have two modern vehicles have the ability to open and utilize the garage. In talking with Mr. Beer, he intimated that if one of the cars is parked in there, you have to let the other passenger out first before you can pull in, so then there's room for both to vacate the vehicle. So that brings us to the process. And so through the variance request, it's a public hearing similar to all the other rezonings or special uses or plan developments, whatever that might be. But the distinction and the difference is with the Zoning Board of Appeals, as you act tonight, your decision becomes the final decision. It's not a recommendation we make to the planning or to the city council. So in essence, as I like to describe to the petitioners, you as the Zoning Board of Appeals, acting as the Planning and Zoning Commission, are ultimately the judge and the jury on this. And if any party is aggrieved by your decision or by your feedback or your direction or your final say in the matter, the appeal has to then go to the higher courts. It doesn't go to the council for an appeal. So then that's this process that the state of Illinois compels communities to go through this over these types of decisions. So it sounds more serious. It is for the simple fact that previously the council puts you in place as Planning and Zoning Commission and takes your recommendation on policy items. Tonight you are acting as the Zoning Board of Appeals and interpreting the code to ensure it complies and affirming whether or not this variance should be granted for the uses proposed tonight. So that was a very lengthy and broad introduction to variance requests, but I think it lays the foundation and the groundwork for how tonight's meeting will go. In the Unified Development Ordinance, under Chapter 18, 18.03, there's a section under variances. And so when the Zoning Board of Appeals was under the direction of Don Merwin, who sat on the commission for 2 or 3 decades, I remember sitting at one meeting with him, and he had a list that he went down very regimented. And it was, you can't go off that list, or it would ruin the flow of the meeting for him. So I think we understand how the process should go, but tonight, for the first one that you've called the public hearing on, we were talking about a garage that would locate in part in the front yard setback onto Monticello Avenue in its same location where the current garage sits, that's dilapidated, leaning, cement cracks that you see in your background. And if Byron can bring it up on the screen, I have also the pictures ready to go on that's also your background material there. But that being said, the provision is seeking a variance from Article 5.0104 of the Unified Development Ordinance. 5.01 is the single-family residential zoning district, where you have the bulk regulations as .04, and so that kind of encapsulates what we're talking about tonight. So on the screen and in your background, these are Google Street View maps showing as you come down Monticello Road. The top one is taken from a little bit further north of the house. The next one in line is directly looking at the garage. And as you can see from the photo, I believe that garage is, if I remember right, all of 8 feet. Is that right, Mr. Beer? Approximately. Off of the right-of-way. So as we continue down Google Street View, this shows the rear of the property. And so, in talking with Mr. Beer, I said, that's great, we can work with you to try to figure out where the garage could go in compliance with code. And as you look at those photos in your background and up on the screen, I certainly understand their point of view that it would remove the trees that you see here on the street. It would remove the landscaping and that picture window in the back. He shows pictures later into this slideshow how this would block the view shed from their picture window out of their living room. So these next photos here are provided by the applicant, and these are in chronological order, and it's hard for me to see from that angle. Mr. Beer, I don't know if you can help explain these. I think this is from the rear of the property, or that's the front of the property.
Front.
Yeah, right, that is from the
Could I,
entrance towards Fairview, the top one.
Herb, can I ask you to go to the mic? Would you please? And maybe at this point in time, since we are under a public hearing, and this is a variance request, that anyone wishing to speak tonight on this record, just raise your right hand and indicate that you swear to tell the truth and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do?
That works for me. Does that work for you, Madam Chair?
That works for me.
Okay. I just, before you started talking, I wanted to make sure that we have
We
that
didn't miss
part
that part, yeah.
done.
Okay, the top one is looking at the north side of the garage and the garage door and the east side of the house, and that's the kitchen entrance. This picture is from the porch up there looking out, looking down. And it's just to get an idea of the layout of the lot and where the walks are. Okay, that's a picture of the garage straight across. And part of the reason that this even started, my wife's holding a surveyor's rod, and that's level, up and down. But the garage, we came back from Florida one year, and we could tell it moved. We couldn't get the garage door up, and it's been getting worse and worse. And a lot of that is caused because when this garage was built after the house. It was built on a slab. There's no footings underneath the floor, and everything is just going down. So that is the west side of the garage, looking at that entrance, and if it was a little clearer, you could see where that's also off. But everything is leaning. This is the area between the garage and the house. This is bowing out. That whole wall is bowing out. It's hard to see on that, but it is. I've had a builder look at it, and he hasn't figured out why it hasn't just done this where the sides go out and the top comes down. I show you the window there. That's what we found. We came home from a trip, and it's, I'm wondering who did it. And then I figured it out. That's from settling. It broke the glass. Okay. That's a picture straight in that shows you the patio and this large tree that's there. That's one of the cracks in the floor. That the whole floor has got great big cracks, and it's settling, and it's staying up in the middle, but it's dropping down. And one of the pictures shows you, yeah, those cracks are over 1.5 inches wide, some of them. And this is a little close-up of the same direction. And this is the tree that Derek's talking about that has to come out no matter what. The other thing that I proposed to Derek when if we get this, when we rebuild the garage, I want to repair the sidewalk there because it's heaving and breaking, and it's a real tripping point, and there's nothing you can do with it. That shows you the sidewalk, and it's just not safe, and this is where that crack is. If you come out of our kitchen, straight out, go to the street, you can trip over that. Well,
Well, turn it sideways.
Yeah, this is just a picture of backyard and what we enjoy. And a little bit later on, as Derek said, there's a picture of out of our bay window that we put into our family room, that we get to enjoy our whole backyard out of. And one of them coming up will show you, okay, that's looking in, and all the neighbors ask me, are you gonna build a new garage? Yeah. You're not gonna build it there, are you? No, but code, that's where I'd have to build it. And that's where it would sit, 15 feet away from the house, and you'd lose everything that's within this area. But the biggest problem is it doesn't fit in the neighborhood. The neighbors would be looking at this monstrosity in the middle of a yard, and we'd lose the use of our backyard for the most part. The second thing is every time we went grocery shopping, we'd have to carry the groceries from the garage up the stone steps across the patio into the house. In the wintertime, I don't think so. And it's just not something that would be an intelligent thing for anybody to do. I don't think the resale value would be, I mean, it would drop because the garage would be worthless to anybody. But that tape there is just where the driveway would be laying, and then this is, once again, looking out. We wouldn't see any part of our southeast part of our backyard, and we'd just be able to see the southwest in about a 4-foot view.
Byron, can you hit the OK button?
Pardon me?
Talking to control.
Oh.
Thank you.
So what our situation is, it's something we need to do, because eventually our garage is gonna collapse. Derek's talked to me about rebuilding it in sections. There's just no way that you're gonna do it without being an awful big cost just trying to do it. And the next thing is, in my business, I have a standard pickup. It's not an extended one because I could never get it in the garage. But my standard pickup, when we go to Florida, we put it in there. It's touching the front wall, and I've got about 6 inches behind it. If my wife and I would park in there, there's no way we can both get out of our cars. She'd have to leave her car out so I can get in, so thusly, my truck sits out all the time. It's just not a good garage for what we need. And by what we're doing, we're gaining the 3 feet that is the walkway between the two right now. So I will now have 3 feet in the front of it, and the 2 extra feet in width will allow me to have space on the side of the garage. So if we are in my truck and come in home, she can get out, or anybody else can get out. Right now I have, from the side of the truck, 12 inches to the wall, so she can get her car in. And we'd have a wider garage door, of course. What we have is, I think, a 14-foot, so it's a narrow garage door to start with.
Yeah.
Thanks, Herb. So before you tonight, you have a request for an 8.5-foot setback variance into that 20-foot setback requirement. So the garage would be 11 and a half feet off the property line. I think that's the math I have in my head. Asking for an 8.5-foot variance that would go from the right-of-way in. So as you saw on the screen, let's see, from the site plan, you can see on the plan itself that the garage is shown at 8.5 feet off the actual sidewalk. And then it would extend a little bit larger than its current situation to accommodate his request for a larger vehicle to coincide in there. This might be a different application if the property was developed under current city regulations. Mr. Beer's property He and his wife were annexed to the city of DeKalb a number of years ago through the involuntary annexations that the city took on. In his background materials, he doesn't believe that Monticello Road was a public roadway back in the 50s or 60s. And with all these externalities affecting the location of this house, he's essentially put himself in a predicament to where if he wants to put a garage up and comply with code, he'll have to take out some of the things that he and his wife enjoy in the background. So the aesthetics are a big thing. He would remove trees, he would increase the impervious surface. So all those were considerations to bring this forward, and for your consideration tonight.
When we came to DeKalb, Benson's lived in that house, and I did some landscaping for him. That was a gravel road. It was before Seco Park was built. So their driveway came into, on a gravel road into the garage.
So, since this is my first variance hearing, I just ask for a little patience as I go through trying to figure out what the next is. So, he's given us his statement, Derek,
Yep.
and now I do this just as we would have a normal public hearing. If anybody is available, wants to speak on it, they're welcome to, correct?
If anyone wants to cross-examine the witness that the code contemplates, yes.
If anyone wants to cross-examine him.
Yep, or if anyone
correct?
else wants to speak on the matter. I will point out that you have also in your background material neighborhood letters that all support the proposal by the Beers. I don't believe anybody indicated that
Correct.
They-
Everybody was in favor.
quite supportive of their proposal.
Okay. Does the cross-examining include us, or is that separate from, are we considered cross-examiners?
I
as
think you
well?
can, I think as the judge and the jury, in my sense, you can cross-examine anybody in this case.
Okay.
I-
Okay.
Again, I think if we have the intent correct, I don't know that we'll, yeah,
Right.
as long as we hear from all parties and everyone has the chance to speak and speak a couple times, then I think we have our bases covered.
Okay, okay. So, Mr. Buer, either, I'll ask you to either go ahead and have a seat back where you were, or you're welcome to sit right by the podium, so I can give the public an opportunity to speak if they wish.
And I'd just like to offer this comment.
Sure.
I started on this about 2 years ago and Louis Larson was going to work on it. And since the get-go, the staff has tried to find how they could approve it, and Derek found it. So I appreciate your thinking about it, and I hope that you'll approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, if we have anyone in the public that would like to make any statement or cross-examine Mr. Buer, you're welcome to, and we would ask you to come to the podium, state your name, address. So do we have anybody in the public, sorry, that would like to, that has anything to say, has anything to ask? Okay, that being none, are there any commissioners that have specific questions for Mr. Buer? Okay, hang on just a second, Roger. Okay, Mr. Buer, now we can have you come back up to the podium, please.
Now, the replacement garage that you'll be erecting, will it be the same distance from the street
Yes.
as the existing garage?
Yes.
Will the proposed garage be a little bit wider?
It'll be, what we're planning is 2 feet. It's actually 1.5 feet, because the one right now is 22.5 in the front, 23 in the back. But we're gonna make it 24, and the other, the reason for that, originally I wanted to build one 26 wide. But we've got a window in the kitchen, one of those, garden window, and then the double windows to our family room on that side are about 28 feet apart, so that gives us a foot on either side. 26 feet. We're going to go 24, right.
All right, and the roof line on the proposed garage, will it be like an approximate pitch?
The roof line on the garage is a challenge for my architect son, but it will be a higher pitch. That's another problem with ours. It's too low for the width. And I'm not quite sure how he's going to tie it all in, but it will fit within the parameters of the existing house side there. It's not going to be above it. It's going to be below it. If I got to drop the floor of the garage 6 inches to make it work, we'll do that too.
Okay. The siding that you're planning to put on the garage, would that be a pretty close match to the existing house?
It's going to be a very close match. All of our siding's being replaced from the hailstorm 2 years ago, and we've been waiting because we don't want to do this and then have to tear it up. So it's all going to match. It's all going to be the vinyl siding, very similar to what we have. Different color probably, but very similar, either the 4 or the 5 inch wide aluminum. It's all going to match.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Okay. Okay, you can go ahead and have a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we can, sorry, I'm just reading these tonight.
Madam Chair, I would offer up, again,
Please
to anyone
guide
in the
me.
audience that wants to speak, just make that available.
One more
And-
time.
Yep, and then afterwards, if there are no
Then we
further
can
questions,
close the
then
close that portion of it.
I believe
Okay.
so. Yep.
So I will open up the floor one more time to anyone in the public that would like to speak. You're welcome to come to the podium. That being none, we're going to close the public hearing portion. And now I would like to open it to any discussion by the commissioners amongst ourselves. Any questions to Derek that we may have?
Derek, I'm trying to understand a little bit of the background here. My understanding is that this property is within an area that was incorporated to the city of DeKalb at some point. Could you, if that is correct, could you remind me if you know when was this incorporation? An idea?
I'm going to guess that it was 2011, 2012. If you want definitive, I can bring that back at next meeting, or I don't recall.
We're talking recently.
I can say that, yes. It was recently.
Okay, during the past 10 years or something.
I can attest to that, yes.
And in the process, and I'm trying to understand here, so bear with me. So in the process of incorporating this area to the city of DeKalb, the city of DeKalb is, in a way, and I'm trying to be careful here with my words, making sure that I get it right. In a way, is imposing its regulations, its codes to the new area.
That's right. So I understand where you're going, so let me elaborate a little further. Any property that's not annexed to the city of DeKalb may continue to operate legally, even if it's brought in and doesn't conform to any of our current regulations. But the expectation is, once you become part of that, if you change the use of your property, if you change the intensity of the use, rezone it, do something completely different than its current use when it's annexed and brought into the community, the expectation is then it has to comply with current codes. So when Fairview Drive, this particular property, was unincorporated in DeKalb County, I don't know specifically what type of setback requirements existed at the time the house was constructed, 50, 60 years ago. I too do not know what was in place the time the current garage was constructed on the site. What I can offer is what the code is today, and that it would be a non-conforming use. And the Beers have the ability to replace the garage as it stands without increasing the setback requirement within the confines of the code. But understanding the need and desire to want to have a usable garage, I understand their request as well, and that's why it's brought forward tonight for your consideration.
So, I mean, it seems to me, and again, correct me if I'm mistaken, and other members of the commission are more than welcome to comment on this. So the only drawback of granting the variance would be that the possibility that every other neighbor in this newly incorporated area may start doing other changes to the property similar in nature to this, and then this variance would serve as a precedent to those future petitions. That's completely hypothetical. I'm not saying that that's going to happen or anything like that.
I think that's a fair statement to make.
Having said that, I just wanted to make sure that I understand what the consequence is.
Mhm.
However, I think I have to commend Mr. Burr or any other resident that is investing in its property, in his or her property, which is a very positive thing. So, and I'm saying that because I think it should be balanced with the potential negative precedent. And again, I'm trying to be cautious here, and I'm fully aware of the fact that I'm using some heavy words here, you know, but again, I would like to commend the resident in this case for the investment in his property.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe there may only be one other property that's similar to yours, I think, in that neighborhood that has a detached garage, kind of similarly. You guys are the only ones? Okay, I couldn't remember if it was the one across the street also. So it is a unique area.
Faces Monticello, everything else in Fairview faces Fairview.
Yeah, and is attached, I think, as well.
And they're all attached.
Yeah.
Can you repeat what Mr. Beer said for?
Sure.
the
So
record.
my comment was about other properties along Fairview, and all of the other properties in that area face Fairview, and all of the garages are attached to the home. So his is a very unique situation and location and property as well.
And
Yeah.
And I would agree with the commissioner that, you know, we always have to think about precedents and what the impact of that will be. But at the same time, that being said, I think that you have to look at the circumstances and the uniqueness of each individual case as well. And I think that, you know, given your situation and the immediate, you know, there's a danger imposed here by the existing structure of collapsing. I think that does weigh toward, you know, giving this some serious thought.
I agree.
Yeah, and again, I would commend you for the work that you've done and with staff to try to make this work for all of us. And I think that it's a beautiful property, and I think that it's great that you did take this effort to do it right. So.
Anybody else? No? I also agree. I commend you for keeping at this and figuring out a way to make this work. I used to live in that area, so I know the property, and I agree with the location that the potential garage could be is just, yeah, no, I don't agree on that either. It just looks so out of place. Looks like you're putting a barn in the middle of a housing area or something. Okay, so we are, ready for a motion, just as we would normally, correct?
So you have two options. You can go through the motion and identify it there, affirming that it meets all 5 standards of the findings of fact that you have in front of you.
So let me read through the findings of fact for everybody, especially those in the audience and at home. So the findings of fact are, upon review of the application and information presented at the public hearing, the board shall consider and adopt findings of fact sustaining each of the following criteria, which are consistent with the rules provided to govern determinations of the Board of Appeals as referenced by the Illinois compiled statutes. Those include: the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations in that district. The extraordinary, would it be best to go through each of these just and clarify that there is?
You can read them all
Okay.
unanimously and say that you're making your motion
Based on
asserting
that.
that they've been met, or you could read them individually and
Okay.
take discussion. I think this is where the intent is being met.
With that being said, can the chair make this motion then? Can the chair make this motion through this language then?
As long as we identify what it is first, yes.
B, the extraordinary or exceptional conditions of the property requiring the request for the variance were not caused by the applicant. C, the proposed variance will alleviate a peculiar, exceptional, or undue hardship as distinguished from a mere inconvenience or pecuniary hardship. It's been a long day, sorry. The denial of the proposed variance will deprive the applicant the use of his or her property in a manner equivalent to the use permitted to be made by the owners of the property in the immediate area. And E, the proposed variance will result in a structure that is appropriate to and compatible with the character and scale of structures in the area in which the variance is being requested. With that being said, if we believe that all of these items have been met, or if you have any discussion or anything outside of that, I will take a motion per those 5 items. You do not have to repeat them. Since I've stated them, you can just say the 5 findings of fact, I believe, so that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And if you want to add any
A through
conditions
E.
beyond that.
So is it a move to accept 5 findings of fact? So I move that we accept the 5 findings of fact in this variance and accept
Accept the variance.
accept the
request.
variance as requested by Mr. Beard.
Okay, so motion's been made by Mr. Wright to accept the 5 findings of fact and the variance that has been put forth. Do I have a second?
I'd like to second with a friendly amendment.
Seconded by Mr. Kroll. Oh, I'm sorry.
With a friendly amendment that the exterior building being erected shall be maintained to match the existing residential structure with color and trim as was said that is acceptable.
So seconded by Mr. Kroll with a friendly amendment, including the information about the exterior
Color and trim.
coloring matching the resident. Roll call?
Commissioner Wright, do you accept that friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Wright,
Yes.
Castro,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Katz? Yes. Neer,
Yes.
Ruling,
Yes.
Chair Atherton?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long time. but
Yes. Okay, now we will move to new business, which is a public hearing. Let me get to it, sorry. Okay. Public hearing on a request by Casey's Retail Company on a building setback requirement on property zoned LC, light commercial, and located at 1001 North Annie Glidden Road, DeKalb. Let me give a little more background on this, based on the purpose from our backup. The provision establishes a minimum 30-foot setback for the side yard setback requirement of the subject property when it abuts a residential district. The petitioner requests the variance to construct an addition onto the west facade of the building that would encroach 10 feet and 4 inches into the side yard setback. So I will start with Derek with any background.
Sure. This too is one of those properties that I think, based upon the circumstances, much like the previous item considered, it has 2 front yard setbacks. It has 2 side yard setbacks. And the 2 side yard setbacks wouldn't be relevant or germane unless it abuts a residential district, in which this case, on both of those sides, it does. So when you come off the north property line and the west property line, the only location you could build in a structure, whether principal or connected to, or an accessory within 10 feet, would be 30 feet away. And then once you add the front yard setbacks, you start reducing that little area where you can build. So this was a project that came to us, I want to say, over the summer. And we were going through the review, building permits were filed, and admittedly, one of the plans, we picked up the building setback line and said, wait a minute, is that the actual property line? Is that the building setback line? What is it we're looking at? And so what Casey's is proposing is a 600 square foot building addition on the west side, as you indicated, Madam Chair. Given that it is located adjacent to, and the screen behind me shows that west property line. So on the left-hand side of that photograph, you can see the residential apartments just off the edge of the photo, and in the background, you can see the edge of the Casey's structure. So again, thankfully, Google Street View was quite kind and had recent updated photos for this. So the photos on the screen kind of show it from west to east, coming down Hillcrest and then turning onto Annie Glidden Road. But it just kind of gives you an overview of the site, the location, and some of the general characteristics of the particular Casey's. Staff reviewed it, the plan, and where they ran into challenges is on that west property boundary. 106.8 square feet actually encroach into that side yard setback. So as you can see from the previous photo, the Casey store is set at an angle on the hard corner. So their front door faces that intersection. If it was generally set on the site in an east-west or north-south fashion and not at a corner, there might be more opportunities. But when Casey started looking at how can we expand our store to respond to the market of convenience stores, they want to offer more frozen foods and more of the grocery type of items where people are using it far more frequently than they would a grocer. And in this particular neighborhood, we know that's quite popular given recent rezoning applications and the need for additional services in this part of the community. So much like we did with the previous applicant, we started thinking, is this the only location you could put a building addition upon it? So the staff analysis and the backup indicate that certainly you could build an addition that would be inside that building setback line. It would be cut off on the extreme, as you can see in the staff report. I know the architect is here tonight to answer questions, trying to find the page where it would be cut off. So on the screen behind me, that green circled area, and I think Mr. Gronart has probably a better drawing than I have on the screen, but it shows the building addition. If you were to extend it, it's a little triangular piece that extends into the building setback line. So the request from Casey's is a variance of 10 feet, 4 inches into that 30-foot side yard setback, which was enacted because of its abutting residential districts, therefore necessitating a 30-foot building setback. So if the properties adjacent to this were commercial on either side, that 30-foot building setback would not be a requirement. But given that it's residential, this is commercial, that additional setback is required. So, when the store was erected in 1999, the petitioners indicated in their background materials that they had no crystal ball to understand what the market would be, and it's their desire to expand their wares, as I indicated, and expand the frozen or freezer section that's inside. One of the alternatives that we considered is not making it as large on that side. One of the other alternatives is to split it in half and put the addition in part on the west and in part on the east. But that would require a total store remodel instead of just one end of it. The other alternative would be to put it on the complete opposite side, but that's where their dumpster corral is, as you can see by the photographs here. So when you start looking at where the canopy is, where the underground tanks are, on the site plan north of the existing building is a detention pond. The ability to expand this particular Casey's becomes very limited. And so the options before them are to comply with current building setback and not propose an addition as large as it is, or seek the variance like they're doing tonight to provide additional wares to the community in this particular part of town. So much like we did last time, I would ask Madam Chair to anyone that wishes to speak, have them raise their right hand and
Okay. All right, anyone, so we will start with the public hearing piece of this. So anyone who would like to speak or who plans on speaking this evening, if you would stand up, raise your right hand. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. So we will start with, I'm assuming you are the petitioner or the owner, or you're the
owner.
architect?
the owner's rep. Yep.
Okay. So when you come to the podium, if you'd give us your name and address before you start, that'd be appreciated.
Mr. Gronart, if you want to point to the item on the pedestal, you can use the mobile mic that's on the other podium.
Oh,
So if you want to walk and talk, you can use the portable microphone.
my name is Donald Gronert, and I'm the architect for Casey's Stores. I live in Normal, Illinois, 6 Striegel Court, and I've been doing work for Casey's for about 30 years. Starting with stores that were smaller than this, and now they're a lot larger. I've got this. This is a site plan which is larger than what you had, and I colored it. to
Sir,
s-
can you put the microphone up a little bit? There, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This is the addition right here. It's actually about 600 square feet. The red portion here is right where the 30-foot line goes. And that's, this little red portion here is what would be outside of the regular space. It would be into the setback. This blue spot here is a place for their trucks to unload. When they back a semi in here, and then they can bring the food or whatever they're delivering to there, and it keeps the traffic out of here. To try to go this way, oh, there's a grease trap and tanks and all kinds of stuff. It's just not the way to go. This is a detention pond here. There is also a detention area that goes this way. So if you did come any other way, the drainage on that site would be completely different. As it is, all of the water that comes off here goes back in here and into a storm sewer. So the areas around here where I've got the green is all existing landscaping, except a lot of the trees and shrubs that were along here, they went to pot. They were not able to take the salt from the snow, and most of them are rotted out. So that'll all have to be changed. But this is our little spot right there, and part of this will get better restrooms for the people that are customers. That's part of their remodeling plan. But this is very critical as far as what they want to do. The stores, this one was, about 40 by 70 feet. Now the stores that they're building are about 45 by 110, so you can tell how they've changed over the years. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to help.
So I'll have you come to this podium over here, since you've got the remote mic.
Okay.
And then we do have a person in the public that would like to speak also. So I'll have him go to the other podium, so that you're still up here. You can go ahead and stay right there, sir. And I'll have the other gentleman come up. I didn't realize that other podium was sitting there.
My name is Michael Welsh. I live at 6 Evergreen Circle in DeKalb, in the northwest quadrant of DeKalb. And besides just wanting to visit the Planning Commission, as I hope to do regularly, I feel very strongly about this project. As you may recall, when we were talking about the university villages just south of this area, very recently, it was described as being in a food desert, I think by the mayor, actually. And this represents the store that my family and I think people feel safe and comfortable going to in this area of town, and that provides great service and a great atmosphere. As I think someone mentioned, perhaps Derek, if they hadn't designed it in such a way that it really made for a nice corner and lots of visibility for turning and things, they could have added this space in a number of areas. But they designed it, to really fit into the community. And I would more than wager that any of the residents that is in the vicinity that's touching this property will be very happy to see this expansion happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak or ask any questions? Okay. Do we have any commissioners that would like to ask any questions?
Are there any support letters from the community? Any adverse letters? Any opposition to this project?
No, none. This went out to the surrounding property owners, and no feedback was received.
Just one note regarding the landscaping. You had mentioned that a lot of the landscaping went to pot due to the salt depositors and everything, and that also with this new addition that there would be additional landscaping required to mask this as the setback will be pushing closer. Is that all acceptable and part of the rollout plan with this?
There will be landscaping done as part of the project, and it will be using plants that are more salt tolerant. And because they had some trees that were that big a diameter that they had to cut down because they were bad.
Okay.
And there's shrubs all the way along the corner. I can talk better with it.
Okay.
All of the shrubs along, let's see, this area here, they're basically gone. There's a couple of them right here in the center. They're not in really good shape, so they just have to go through and do it over again.
It's mentioned by the city here, Derek, that a landscaping plan be provided where the existing tree line is not reduced to provide that screening element. Has such a plan been brought forward to the city, and is it acceptable, or is that something to happen subsequent of an approval?
So this was one of those that we were mid-plan review and realized that before we could continue with finalizing the plans and revising any of the plans, we needed first and foremost to obtain the variance. So the
Okay.
plan set has not been finalized. Review comments have been sent back to Casey's, but everything was kind of put on hold until this part of the process was resolved. So they have submitted a landscape plan, they have submitted building plans, but until this is resolved, we can't move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a curiosity. If I were to stand, and you may be able to answer this, I just want to have an idea about this. If I were to stand on the southwest corner of the actual rectangular building, the one that is right there right now, and look directly west, I'm going to see some residential buildings, correct? And it doesn't show here, but I'm looking at this particular, I don't have it in black and white, but there's a small map that shows, yeah, there it is.
This is the end of the existing building, this red line.
So if I were to stand in the corner that is closest to your red area, if I were to stand in the corner closest to your little red triangle, and I were to look directly west, I'm going to see a residential building, and I can see it in the bottom picture, both actually, the top picture. What distance are we talking about? I just want to get a feeling for how far are we from those residences?
Once the building's constructed, if we approve it. Is that
Both.
both? Okay.
I would think you're 75 to 100 feet from those residences. They're much closer over here.
Oh, yeah.
But these are on the other side of the room, way over there.
And it is, I assume that it's fair, I'm sorry, it is fair to assume that those residents have received the correspondence that you sent out, Mr. Highland, with respect to letting them know that this is going to take place.
We don't notify the residents, we notify the property owners.
Correct.
So when they were notified, yes.
Okay. Okay. So 70 to 75 to 100 feet is your estimate of the distance. And Mr. Highland, does that seem reasonable to you, that estimate?
Give me 1 second.
Thanks.
I would say it's close to 100 feet.
Okay. So the addition, as I see the numbers, is not going to take that much off. It's not going to be a significant difference from those 100 feet. Is where I am trying to get, what I'm trying to understand.
No, and what you're missing on the side, at least from when I took the perspective, this top photo that's included in your packet that shows on the top there, the side profile, that's about where the property line is. So you see the green area beyond that large tree. Then you see the smaller shrubs. Then you see the access drive. Then there's another green area, and then the actual building. That's about 100, probably close to 100 feet, because it's 114 feet from the corner of that building to the corner of the current Casey's, and this is all approximates, of course. So if you bring it closer, 10 additional feet, you're down to about 100 feet.
Okay.
Currently, there are shrubs and small trees all along here.
Which will stay, correct?
Excuse me?
They will stay.
They will stay, or if they've got a problem, they'll be replaced. There are trees all around here and back in here. There's a bunch of trees along here and coming along, and the won't be disturbed. This is an existing curve, this won't be disturbed.
Thanks.
And most of this building will be pretty well shielded from the road by trees and shrubs.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any questions? Okay. I will ask one more time if anybody in the audience has any questions or comments. That being none, I'm going to close the public hearing. No,
Could I
I'm
ask
sorry.
a question?
Go ahead.
When you were looking for additional space for your store, was there any thought given to expanding out the back of the store?
Well, yes, there was, but there's a detention basin back there for storm water. And you'd have to get down into that and you'd make a mess of the existing system.
Okay. The basin, is it like a drain that the water flows into, or is it a like a pond?
Yeah, I know that's what I'm trying to picture. But there is water that comes from here, and it goes down into this, excuse me, area here, but then over here, there's water comes this way, goes there, and then it goes down into the basin, and eventually it goes this way and out that way. So, and this is down probably about 4 feet. So there's a volume of water can go in.
Okay, and it looks like that's pretty close to the back of the building.
It's about as close as you want to get.
Okay.
I mean, you can barely walk along here. It's probably about that wide, and then it goes down.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing portion. You can go ahead and have a seat, thank you. Discussion among the commissioners. Or any questions for Derek?
Just one question. You know, with the idling trucks,
Can you-
loading, the idling trucks that will be loading to the store, there's not gonna be an issue with decibels with the multifamily next door, correct?
That's a good question. I don't know if there would be a substantial difference in 10 feet. I don't know where the trucks currently idle and unload today. Certainly, he's identified an area on there where the trucks are intended to load hereafter, but I would assume that Casey's gets deliveries all throughout the week, all throughout the day, from various vendors and providers. It's not something that I considered for the simple fact that it is additional 10 feet, but if it's something that the commission should think that it needs further exploration, then we can certainly revisit that, but my instincts tell me that it should not be an issue.
Yeah. Just a question. You know, I
Sure.
figured with the trees there, probably not, but.
The trees would help a little bit, but not like a fence would. per se.
Anybody else? Deb? No? Okay. Yes. We'll have to have you come up to the podium. Sir, yeah, thanks.
Currently, the trucks, when they're semis, and most of the foods are delivered from Casey's Warehouse in Ankeny, Iowa. They have a huge warehouse there. But they generally, right now, would pull right in here and unload and then come in the front door. What they are proposing is that the truck would back in here, and it would basically be protected by the cars that park along here. The tractor would still be in this area here, and then they can take their foods directly into the building. And I would say they get, 1 or 2 semis a week, and over here, I gotta find, right here, this is where they have their oil tanks for gasoline and diesel fuel, and their truck would come in and work right in there. But you can't have things running all over there, but they would be getting all of their deliveries basically in this area. When they first built the buildings, they didn't have the deliveries like they have now. And they have their own fleet of trucks. I don't know how many, but they've got lots.
Thank you.
I got a question about that for you, Derek.
Sure.
For the purposes of tonight, though, I mean, we're looking at granting a variance for the addition.
Mm-hmm.
But things like the landscaping, you said earlier that landscaping and perhaps the issue of the loading dock, would that not be submitted as part of a final plan? Or is this it?
That's a good question. I didn't even. Yes, in hindsight, they probably should have been included. The interior building, so you could see how it would function. The landscaping plan, too, could or should have been included. It was just one of those. I was thinking variance, and not thinking of the externalities until I came up with the staff report, just to say that I've verified that there's a landscaping bank of shrubs and trees on the west side, and as part of this, I didn't want to see that being removed and wanted to have that continued because I think it only contributes to the screening of that side of the building. And so that was one of the conditions of approval, but and maybe that would be the only germane or relevant part for this.
Yeah, because the other question I have then is that when I look at these pictures where I see that the addition is supposed to go and the proposed loading dock, it appears that there's a space there right now. Appears to be one car parked there, and it looks like there might be spaces for 2.
Mm-hmm.
But yet the plan that I'm looking at shows the addition, the loading dock, and then what appears to be 2 spaces.
Sure.
So they're going to be cutting out of that landscaping area in order to accommodate all that, correct? Or am I off here?
I don't think that's the case. I think they'll
Okay.
just stripe it further down the barrier curve.
Okay, so there's enough room for the addition, the proposed loading zone, and 2 10-foot parking spaces.
I believe so. They're gonna jet out and jettison out a little bit further than what you would typically see today, but I think they're carrying that striping plan further down that barrier curb, allowing for additional parking off the site.
And so as it juts out a little bit, that's not going to interfere with the traffic lanes at all?
Doesn't look like it on the plan.
Well, it didn't look
Yeah.
like it, but I want to make sure.
And kind of staggered, which, yeah, now that you
Yeah.
say that.
We didn't call that out as an issue. I can't say for certain, but, you know, I was not aware how Casey's got their deliveries with a semi-truck and if it's with a tractor trailer, but I was thinking more of like the bread trucks or the Frito-Lay guy or whoever goes to convenience stores. I don't know what a box truck would look like if it parked there.
Well, I mean, I've seen Casey semis, and I'm assuming they're coming from the warehouse to the individual stores, and those are 53-foot semis. I mean, they're not little panel delivery trucks or anything like that.
Right.
So, that was just something that kind of threw up a red flag, and I just wanted to kind of make clear in my mind what from this process tonight, how much further review is going to be part of it. I mean, if everyone here and if you're convinced that, those questions are all
So
answered, then fine.
the plan would have to conform to whatever standards of the Unified Development Ordinance exists. And where I indicated we were in the plan review process is plans were submitted, they were routed to our plan review team, so that went to the engineering, et cetera. Those comments were then sent back to Casey's. And at this point in time, we are waiting for revised plans based upon that review and tonight's approval before they go and expend the money and dollars to ask Mr. Gronart or the civil engineer to redraw those plans. If we came tonight and and you all don't support it and you deny their request, that changes the plan set that we have already under review.
Yeah, and my issue is not so much denying the variance per se, it's just, I want to make sure that the landscaping issues are addressed, that, there is a buffer area, particularly since you are going to see loading at this particular spot now.
Sure.
It's not going to trucks aren't just going to pull up randomly in front of the building or, out here into the parking area beyond the pumps. They're going to be pulling into that loading area. That's where they're going to be.
Right. I can say for my comfort level, hearing what he indicated tonight, that was my only concern, is that these trees would be removed. And these are substantial shade trees and also low-lying shrubs. So it does provide that blockage and that screen that you can see in the first and third picture. You can see kind of both sides of it in the staff report.
I realize 100 feet is, that's quite a bit of space. However, if you got a semi backing up with its
Sure.
backup lights and the red reflectors, that's going to show to these people that are facing toward
Yeah.
it.
These,
So-
I don't know what type they are. They look like maples just from the photograph. And the shrubs and the bushes that are not on their property look like they're evergreens. So there's a combination, and for all intents and purposes, these trees may or may not be on Casey's property line. I don't know. It's a uniquely platted lot.
Yeah.
When you identify the lot line and then start with the building setback line, the parcel lot line did not exist where I thought it did when we were reviewing the plans.
So I could support this with those conditions met, that, those things are reviewed.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense to have them as a condition of approval.
Okay.
So our recommendation was to ensure that those trees on that west property line are not reduced beyond what exists today. And if we can add more to that, that's what we're going to assure going forward, because I think that's the important part of this particular site plan.
And I almost personally, and I don't know if it's possible, I would almost go beyond just that the existing trees aren't disturbed, but that there's adequate buffering around that loading area and the addition,
So that could certainly be a
you
condition
know.
of approval for the variance. You have that right.
To add that into the motion that we make then.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I help with the trees along here.
Could you get the microphone again? I'm sorry.
There's people watching at home and we're recording the meeting, so
Yeah.
your testimony is important.
The trees along this side of the building, this curb line will not be touched. These are probably 8 or 9 feet tall right now. They're kind of a real bushy tree. And they go all the way along here and around that way. But then when you get over here, there are trees all the way around the back of the property. And the semi would come in like this and back that way. So you would not have headlights going into the residential area other than people coming out this which direction here. And this is the only way you can get out of the property. You have an entrance here, but you can't go back out. So all traffic goes this way.
When the truck's back in for unloading, is there like a roller that's set up and then the boxes are put on this conveyor to take it into the building?
Yes. They take like a ramp out of the side of the truck and then bring the stuff in. There isn't a loading dock per se. It's just
Right.
a parking spot for the semi. And it works a lot better because when they're here, the customers are in bad shape.
Okay, so, when the truck is unloaded, is there a tailgate that's raised up and down?
No, it comes out of the side of the truck.
Okay, out of the side, and then there are rollers that roll it into right through the door, into the
It goes right.
into
they
the store?
Line it up with the door. There's a
Yeah.
hallway that goes right through here.
Mm-hmm.
They line the door up there, and they might be off a little bit, but they take it right into the building.
Okay.
They've just, it's probably in the last, 8 or 10 years that we've done more of this. And all of the new stores are doing it that way. It just works much better for delivering the product.
McDonald's actually used to have a similar system in their older stores.
If you would like this drawing, you're welcome to have it.
Thank you. Mr. Kroll has, did you, oh, I thought you had something. I'm sorry, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, whatever was talking about, I touched on earlier. Typically, and I'm not chastising you there, we usually do have landscaping plans for these kinds of additions, and I think that's where the concern was coming from, that these trees would be knocked out if necessary, but it sounds like they're not going to be. So as long as a landscaping plan in accordance with the variance that we could potentially grant tonight is followed, there's not a problem.
Well, actually, the place where you
So-
really need to do landscaping is all along
Yeah.
here. These are all dead. There's a few here. And along this, most of this is dead. These are mostly alive.
Yeah. And all that's just an additional plan that doesn't require variance, is just going to be done anyway.
You know,
Great.
It has to be done. It's done right.
Exactly. Yeah. All right.
And Casey's does not stand for their landscaping being bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen many of their stores, but their lawns are there, the trees and shrubs are all taken care of. It's just the way they do it.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Any other comments? We're good? Okay, so as we did with the last one, we have the findings of fact that we have to make sure that everything has been considered. I will read through A through E again very quickly. The property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations in that district. B, the extraordinary or exceptional conditions of the property requiring the request for the variance were not caused by the applicant. C, the proposed variance will alleviate a peculiar, exceptional, and undue hardship as distinguished from a mere inconvenience or pecuniary hardship. D, the denial of the proposed variance will deprive the applicant the use of his or her property in a manner equivalent to the use permitted to be made by the owners of property in the immediate area. And E, the proposed variance will result in a structure that is appropriate to and compatible with the character and scale of structures in the area in which the variance is being requested. If we believe that those have been met, or if you have any considerations within those, I will take a motion to go along with that, along with any requirements that we would like to make, or going along with the recommendations that the city has made.
Make a motion.
Go ahead.
Make a motion that we recommend the variance for the proposed 600 square foot addition to this Casey store with the following condition, that the landscaping plan that will be provided to the city whereby the existing tree line is not reduced to provide the screening element for the residential buildings adjacent.
I'll second.
So the motion in front of us is to accept the variance for the addition with the landscaping, with city approval, with the existing not being reduced, with the existing tree line not being reduced, by Mr. Kroll. Did I get that pretty close? Okay. Seconded by Ms. Neer. And is there any discussion? If not, roll call.
Kroll,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Neer,
Yes.
Ruling,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Castro,
Yes.
Atherton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Considerations or future considerations? There are none, it appears.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gotta go like that.
Not a problem. I was curious, Mr. Highland, whether what the status is of or any follow-ups to the discussion we had last year on signs in the city. I remember this was less than a few months old. We had a workshop on the topic, and my understanding is that there would be some follow-up to that. I was wondering what the status of that is.
Sure. I think that was a workshop that we had done back in November. And the indication at that time was the direction was clear that we were going to amend Article 13 of the sign ordinance to allow electronic changeable copy signs as a part of a special use permit request. I shared that and reported that back to the development team, the city manager, community development director, and the sorts. And there are other changes forthcoming to the Unified Development Ordinance. So as the months pass, we find other areas of the code that need to be changed and modified. I won't say knocked 4 of them out about 16 months ago, but we're going to revisit that again. And right now, we're coming up with a list of items that will come back at a future meeting. So it'll all be a package deal. But there's anything in particular that beyond just the signage that we want to have another workshop on, revisit that. If we want to go through each of these as a workshop and come up with new language, this is what we base our decisions upon, is the Unified Development Ordinance. So I'm always happy to have another discussion with the group on that. But my expectation is probably in the next 60 days to bring something on amending the Unified Development Ordinance. So there's some things going on right now that it doesn't allow me to get to those larger projects.
Sounds good.
But we'll get to them soon enough.
So in specifically on the science topic workshop, I appreciate it. I appreciate that you brought it to our attention. It's a topic that is of interest to me just because of our aesthetics in our city, and the future of our city. But then at a more general level, and for the same reason, I think it was a good idea to bring this to the commission. And I appreciate that you brought it to the commission for discussion. In that same vein, I would actually tell the other commissioners here that, I think the doors are open for us, tell me if not, to discuss other topics of interest in our
Absolutely.
city. And it is not that difficult to start thinking about some topics that have been recurrent in the past and some of the issues that we have addressed. The one thing that comes to me as a very good example is the eternal issue of parking, for example. I'm not saying that I have any specific ideas of discussion, but the fact that it continues to come to our attention in this or that other plan is something for us to consider then whether we should be addressing this one, review what is in the books, that, if nothing changes, at least we gave ourselves a chance to review it, not attached to a particular project, but at a more general level. Having said that, again, thank you very much for having brought the issue of science to our attention. And again, I will be very happy to entertain other topics in the future. I wouldn't be surprised that I suggest something more specific in the future as well. Thanks.
I think that's actually a very good idea I'm glad you brought that up about the parking. It may be something we may want to discuss. We've got a lot of new commissioners with us now, and it may be a good time to review it and check it out, especially given I think it was one of the last, when we were discussing having the workshop with the Shodine plan, really came into light, the discussion about parking. So if we could maybe, I think I would like to have a discussion about that in a small workshop,
Okay.
like we did with the signs, maybe in February.
Okay.
So if you could add that, that would be appreciated. Thank you for bringing that up. Does anybody have any other considerations or things they'd like to think about it? Like David said, if you don't, I don't want to put you on the spot. But I do have something that I would like to, before we finish up real quick here tonight. I'm not sure how many of you know, I don't know the full details because I haven't been following it very closely, but our city is apparently in a competition with 350 other cities in the United States, and we are now down in the top 50. We've been,
Top 15.
15.
15? Oh, on Facebook it said we were in the top 50. Can you, mention what this is? Do you know much about this now that I'm going to put you on the spot? It just really invaded Facebook this afternoon. It's kind of exciting.
Sure. Yeah. It was on our city's website, and I think it was on the Chronicle, and some other websites picked it up as well. So this is America's Best Communities, and America's Best Communities is being funded through Frontier Communications, also Verizon, that whole conglomerate, as well as Dish Network, and I'm certainly forgetting some other corporations, but it was a nationwide competition that, you're absolutely right, had over 300 and some communities apply to be one of America's best communities. The city of DeKalb was awarded the first go-around grant to continue on the efforts to pursue the overall top prize of, I think, of $3 million, I think it is. So it's a planning document that's being proposed for the city of DeKalb, where you bring in the arts, economic development, what the university can provide through innovation corridor. So it's a very broad, very specific example. I think if you go on Proudly DeKalb's website, you can actually read the submittal and the plan and start kind of wrapping your head around it. But today, the city was acknowledged as one of the top 15 in the country, the only one left in the state of Illinois. Up until yesterday, there were 3 communities, ourselves, Monmouth, and I think Carbondale, I think was the other one. But it's now down to us and 14 other communities. So next step of the process is to attend a America's Best Communities conference workshop in North Carolina the weekend of April 24th through the 26th, I think it is, where each of those semifinalists or quarterfinalists have the opportunity to present their plan and share their ideas with the other communities either that day or shortly thereafter. Then the ABC organization then awards an additional $100,000 to implement that plan, whereby then that goes down to 8 communities, I think, at the $100,000 award. So then a year goes by, and then each community, based upon their implementation, is reviewed, and the challenge is laid to say, okay, go implement it, and those that have done wonderful things with it can then win the top 3 prizes of $3 million, $2 million, and $1 million to invoke revitalization in each of these communities. So it's a very exciting thing.
Yeah.
But go to Proudly DeKalb and learn more about it. And as time goes on, I know that the ABC committee will be prepared to make that presentation in April, and hopefully more wonderful things to come.
That's awesome. Congratulations to those who have put the work in. And it's a great way to showcase our community, so that's pretty awesome. And I will comment that there's another city in our neighboring state of Indiana, in DeKalb County. They have a DeKalb County as well. Andola is one of the, or was in one of the groups as well. So it's something very definitely to say kudos about our city. So I think it's very cool.
Absolutely.
I wanted to mention it tonight. Thank you. So coming up for our next meeting, we have a meeting scheduled for January 27th, and it looks like on our docket will be a continued public hearing, and then a new public hearing that possibly is in the works. So we have a few things coming up yet. And I will take a motion to adjourn if you'd like.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Kroll,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Katz. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.